Before there was time. Before there was anything. There was nothing. Before there was nothing, there were monsters. Here's your gold star.
Have you ever noticed the role that space plays in the major shows from the cartoon renaissance? In Adventure Time, the main form of change comes through the Catalyst comets crashing to Earth every 1,000 years. I mean, even Finn came from one of these comets, and Jake is explained to be a star child later in the show. In Gravity Falls, we know that a UFO crash landed and might have caused the anomalies present in the town, or vice versa. And in regular show, the final season consists of the main cast venturing into space to unlock Pop's godlike powers. The celestial setting clearly plays a major part in all three of these shows, and when new settings emerge, new villains emerge. But before we can talk about our off-world friends, we should go back a bit. Our story starts with an up-and-coming animator, Pat McHale. McHale is in the process of pitching two shows to Cartoon Network, Space Planet, the other being Over the Garden Wall. As we know, Over the Garden Wall would go on to have its own show a few years later, but Space Planet never got its own show. And Space Planet was described as being a quirky cosmic opera with deeper philosophical themes. If that doesn't sound similar to Adventure Time, I don't know what does. McHale eventually joined with Pendleton Ward as the creative director of Adventure Time for the first two seasons. He made a major contribution to the show in the form of the Lich and BMO, characters originally created for Space Planet. The original idea of the Lich is much different than the one we have come to know and love, though. This was the Lich King as a dark knight serving a warped sense of humor against silliness. An all-powerful, unimaginative bureaucrat instead of a brooding dark prince, who is bored and uncreative and orders acts of evil to feel the tiny sadistic thrill. It wasn't long after his first appearance that the Lich became the coolest galaxy murderer on the block. Later we found out that he is not just a mindless evil, but a spawn of human influence. Adventure Time up to the introduction of the mushroom bomb and the Lich had been a lot more wacky and silly than the later seasons would go on to be. The Lich fundamentally changed this with his presence. Any scene with him created a tonal shift. It was not funny, he did not play around, he was dead serious. He was the darkest void in a colorful world. But the Lich also brings entertainment and depth to the story in a meaningful way. He gives Finn and Jake a real challenge. These challenges make them question what is important to them, who they can trust, and how far they are willing to go to be heroes. The Lich transforms Finn from a cartoon character to someone mortal and relatable. Someone who does not have all the answers and can be defeated. The Lich puts the human in Finn the human. The Lich emphasizes this humanity in all of us, too. He is the bringer of the mushroom bomb and the war. In the Islands miniseries, people look back to the past and conclude, our ways had failed, nature had failed. The failure of humans to prevent the bombs dropping is how most of the population went extinct. This robed skeleton is literally present to end humanity. And that's why it's so important that Finn defeats him again and again. Finn is the good of humanity. He is the pure-hearted part in us all fighting the unavoidable presence of darkness. Adventure Time would go on to give us other cosmic villains such as Orgolorg and Gulb, but the Lich is the true celestial masterpiece of the show. Another one of the most iconic villains of the cartoon renaissance came in the form of an evil triangle. Bill wasn't present until episode 19, but once he appeared, he was instantly recognizable due to his infamous Illuminati design. Hirsch didn't need to design a mysterious being. He only needed to showcase something already mysterious to most Americans. The viewers first meet Bill when he is doing his dream demon schemes in the mindscape. It isn't until later in the show that we actually learn he is interdimensional. Ford believes he's from a dimension similar to the 2D dimension he came across while in the portal. I think the ingenious thing about Bill, though, is how he's defeated and dealt with at various points in the story. His first defeat is to the Pines twins and Seuss in Stan's mind. They realize that everyone has power in the dream state. In this episode, Bill preys on Stan's unconscious mind, and his friends and family must save him. Bill's last defeat is when he enters Stan's conscious mind. Here, Stan defeats Bill himself, reminded of what he is sacrificing this all for. So despite being interdimensional, the front on which he is battled is the human mind. He has the potential to be a universal god, yet he needs the sadness of a sister or the folly of a brother to reach that power. This is reinforced by the fact that there has to be a literal handshake agreement for him to have full control. In this way, Bill is more personal of a villain than the Lich is. While the Lich gains power from the recklessness of a civilization, Bill gains power by the emotions of each individual he has contact with. Bill is each of our bad days, our griefs, and our nightmares. Bill represents a villain we might have to fight alone sometimes. Other times, he's a villain that can be held back by our loved ones. This makes him immortal, sure, but what does being immortal mean if you have become powerless due to the ability of a person's mind to deal with you? And looking back on it, it's not weird that an interdimensional being stands to present these themes. I mean, when you're a kid, emotions such as summer ending or moving on from childhood feel like the universe is closing in on you. In our worst moments, we allow our minds to enter the nightmare realm, where we give emotion all the power it could ever dream of. So using a space demon to represent this feels accurate to the weight of which they feel. Animator Jesse Moynihan has a quote: "It's fun to drop cosmic bombs on kids, and to make it feel as real and legit as possible." I'm pretty sure kids like to get their minds blown. They want to engage forces that are infinitely bigger than themselves. At least that's how I felt as a kid, and how I still feel. You can address the heaviest questions and use them in the context of adventuring and humor. The weight of those questions serves to deepen the enjoyment of an adventure. If you nail the right proportions of fear, mystery, action, and humor, then you've got a gem of entertainment. He goes on saying, "I can always detect a phony when they write generic stuff like, 'use your heart.' What does that mean, use your heart? It doesn't mean anything by itself. Using your heart has to apply to the character's specific personal experience, or to a specific idea about where the heart comes from, in relation to the birth of the universe. Then, use your heart means something." And lastly, I found it worth mentioning Malum Cranus, aka Anti-Pops from Regular Show. While he's definitely not on the same tier as the Lich and Bill Cipher, I believe he deserves some discussion. The viewers first meet Anti-Pops in the episode The Dream Warrior, a reference to the third Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which is reinforced by the fact that he is voiced by Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. So again, we see a universal evil being introduced in the form of a nightmare. Malum doesn't seek weak individuals for power, though. He simply wants to defeat Pops. Pops is the absolute good of the universe that must be destroyed. And of course, love wins in the end and all, but it adds a meaningful conclusion to the show. For something as funny and lighthearted as Regular Show, it's crazy to think that it actually hits you with a legitimate character death in the end. And afterwards, we see the park employees again continuing their lives and remembering Pops, even though they just won a battle that has not been won for multiple universe resets. They go on valuing what they have on Earth and the people they have met. All three of these modern classics had a larger-than-life villain. Before this, Western animation had rarely seen this type of weight given to an antagonist. These were villains that had humanity-ending goals, yet every time the villain was defeated by a group of friends. These villains came with tones of death, destruction, and hate, but all they ever accomplish is reinvigorating the love and appreciation of those they attempt to destroy. And it's fascinating to think how young most of the audience was when they were introduced to themes such as the ones presented in these shows. Storyboard artist Jack Pendravis summarized this best, and I'll leave you with a quote of his. "There's a reason kids have always wanted to hear about the witch who's going to trap kids in the gingerbread house and eat them, and about the poor woodcutter who abandons his kids in the forest, and that thing in the bed that looks sort of like your grandmother, but what big teeth it has." In his famous book on the subject, psychologist Bruno Bettelheim suggests that fairy tales, which contain lots of monsters and loss and death and abandonment, secretly teach kids how to deal with the stuff that scares them anyway. I mean, the stories don't create fear. The stories address the fear. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. I'd love to hear what you all have to say about the villains in the comments. Until next time.